Hi, welcome to the road least traveled. My name is Suli and I'm your host. In this podcast, I share with you what I've learned from my journey of self-awareness and spiritual awakening, and also some simple and practical tips to help you in your own journey. So stay with me. Let's work this thing out together. So recently, a friend was going through a tough time. She was in quite a bit of mental pain, and I said, "Why don't you try surrendering?" She said, "Surrender to what? Surrender to whom?" And it got me thinking, how do I explain what surrendering means, to what and to whom? I didn't know how to articulate it then, but now I think I can give it a shot. I want to share with you a quote from Eckhart Tolle, and it's this: "When the ego weeps for what it has lost, the spirit rejoices for what it has found." So this is what I want to share with you today: the power of surrendering and the one thing that prevents you from spiritual awakening. So many of us are in pain due to childhood traumas. These traumas strengthened our egos because, well, the ego's job is to protect us. As children, we couldn't defend ourselves or physically fight back, so the ego keeps count of all the abuse that we suffered and promised us that it'll try harder to protect us. The more harm that came to you as a child, the stronger your ego would have become. In life-threatening situations, your ego takes control and your higher self takes a step back. In a dangerous situation, it's really not the time to be airy-fairy and all woo-woo about it, But as we grow up and we're not in danger anymore, the ego continues to strengthen itself out of habit, and we're unaware of this happening. That is where the danger lies. Now, I'm not a fan of killing the ego or seeing it as a bad thing. It's just doing its job. It was trained by those that caused you harm. In itself, the ego is not bad. It's like working out in the gym on your biceps only. Over time, your biceps become much bigger and stronger than your other muscles. That doesn't mean that the bicep is a bad muscle, just as the ego is not a bad thing. So all you need to do is to retrain it and start strengthening your spiritual muscles so you're more balanced. Think of yourself as consisting of two parts, the ego and your higher self, both doing different jobs. The ego is fear-based. It's there to protect you from physical harm, to make sure that you have enough food, shelter, and safety. That's about it, really. It's intended purely for physical survival. If you use it for more than that purpose, then you'll get diminishing returns. There's always diminishing returns in everything. So balance is the key. Now, the other half of you, your higher self, is love-based. It's what connects you to the universe or God, where love and infinite wisdom are. There's no fear, no insecurities, no judgment, just pure wisdom and an inner knowing of everything there is to know about yourself, about life and beyond. That's why we need to balance both our ego and our higher self. It's only when we let our ego take control over our higher self that it becomes harmful to our mental and spiritual health. And that's when we have a nagging feeling about why we're still unhappy, despite our material wealth, despite our beautiful houses and expensive cars and gadgets, despite our physical beauty, despite reaching the pinnacle of success in the corporate world. There's a bird chirping quite noisily outside. I hope you don't mind. I can't scold it for being happy now, can I? So anyway, back to what I was saying. Nowadays, thanks to the greed of capitalism, we're all pressured to have more material things and status. It's so hard not to buy your child the latest gadget because, well, everyone else's children have them, and people might judge you for being an inadequate parent. There's so many pressures every day to conform to society's idea of what living a successful life is. And our ego has become so strong that it sees not having more material things as a danger to your survival. It's always concerned about getting more things and more recognition. The ego is also easily offended by what other people say. what they think of us, paranoid that others are judging us, all because it's hardwired to protect us from physical harm. The world at large has allowed the ego to run amok, and it goes on overdrive and fights to protect you from situations that are not even physically harmful. And corporations take advantage of this and further tempts our ego to puff itself up even more. I was a copywriter in the advertising industry, and the better my writing, the more persuasive and insightful, the more manipulative it became. The formula is actually ridiculously simple. The more we appeal to consumers' fears and vanity, the more effective we are. My best work was the most morally bankrupt. So I guess this podcast is my way of giving back to the society I helped create. So here's a simple question to ask yourself. What makes you sad, worried, or scared? Will those situations kill you, as in cause you to die? If it doesn't kill you, then whatever is making you uncomfortable, sad, or depressed is the result of an ego that doesn't know when to stop protecting you. It's like an overprotective and paranoid bodyguard that keeps scaring you that taking a risk in pursuing your passion will kill you. Not having the latest designer clothes or not being seen as materially successful will kill you. It'll keep scaring you unless you tell this bodyguard, look, I really appreciate your concern, but your job is to protect me from bullets and knives and a speeding car driven by a drunk driver. For everything else, please leave it to my higher self to guide me, okay? You need to chill. You've been working too hard. You see, it's the imbalance between our ego and our higher self that makes us unhappy, unhealthy, and uncomfortable. Here's another question. Do you know when your ego is making excuses in order to scare you? Thoughts like, if I had enough money, I'd do such and such. Or if I had such and such, I'd do this and that. If, so many ifs. Another excuse is staying in a comfort zone that doesn't make you grow, and you let your ego convince you that you're staying for a good reason. Yeah, it might be a good reason, but it could just as well be an excuse. Of course, we could stay in our comfort zones forever, but our soul will always yearn for what it wants, and that is growth. The soul needs to grow. It's its nature. Denying our soul growth is what makes us unhappy. It's not lack of money or status or recognition, it's lack of growth. Doing the same things year after year, decade after decade, acquiring more of the same that doesn't lead to spiritual growth, that's what gives us that nagging feeling of unhappiness. And we can't exactly put a finger to it because we think that we need to acquire more of the same. But when it gets to a point where you just can't stand the torture of your ego anymore, that's when you surrender. When you ask your ego to surrender control, your higher self can finally come out of its shell. And that is the beginning of spiritual awakening. Telling your ego to surrender is giving permission to the universe or God to share your burdens. Telling your ego to surrender is inviting the angels, the universe, or God to finally be able to guide you. Why? Because we have free will. The angels, the universe, or God will not help you unless you give them permission. So don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. What I've learned is that the most important thing is to have a real, genuine intention to turn our life around. And there's no need to worry about how to do it, because once we have an honest intention to change it, the universe will orchestrate everything to help us. Some call it coincidence or luck, but actually it's the universe planning for you. Now, there's a big difference between faith and fatalism. Fatalism is not taking responsibility for our own happiness and expecting God to do it all for us, and then blaming God when things don't work out. Faith is when we trust that the universe hears us and will orchestrate events to our advantage, but we have to be willing to put in the effort to fulfill our end of the deal. The universe has no arms and legs to actually do things, we do. So our end of the deal is to get off our asses and put into action what the universe has planned for us. That sort of surrender is powerful. Surrendering tells the ego to chill. Surrendering brings about true gratitude. Surrendering is loving a higher being the universe, or God. And loving a higher being is loving yourself. If you're going through a tough time, I hope something in this episode awakened something in you. So this is all I wanted to say today. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. If you found this helpful, please share it.